Hi, Colette. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, I would love to have you start off by introducing yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I'm Collett. I just graduated a few months ago from Berkeley. I had studied business and then I minored in political economy and data science. Those are really fun on campus. I was just involved with BWIB, of course. I was the last president and I was in the healthcare consulting group and just did a lot of volunteering in healthcare. So that's what I spent my time doing in college. Now I work at, this is the important part. Now I work at Goldman in healthcare investment banking. So kind of on the same trend that I had started in college.
Wow. And so that is very impressive. Do you think you could tell me a little bit about your career trajectory, how you got to Goldman?
Yeah, I think there's, of course, a lot of pieces to it. It's an incremental process. But the way I actually got introduced to investment banking was from someone in BWIB whenever I was a freshman. Of course, a lot of us come into college not even knowing what those words mean. I thought that investment banking, there's an investing component that you do, but it's actually a misnomer, and that's not what it is. So I think just talking to people as much as I could in terms of peers and people who are older than me at Berkeley. And that really helped me in my first year. And just from those conversations, I realized that I could be in the healthcare sector, which is something that was a non negotiable for me, and still do something that was new, worked with numbers a lot, had a bit of strategy. And that's how I initially got introduced to investment banking. I think the common few steps are you do one internship in like a private equity fund or venture capital, and then you think, okay, well, how do I get here long term? Then you do investment banking for however long you think is appropriate to get those skills really solidified. And then from then on, people have careers in finance in so many different fields. So that's kind of been what's driving me doing banking and how I ended up there.
And why, okay, would you be able to just tell us a little bit about what investment banking is and then
Yeah,
specifically the healthcare work? Like, what does that look like on the day to day and what is it just generally?
yeah. Oh, definitely. I think the one thing that I actually love about investment banking is that no day is identical. Actually, no hour is identical, honestly. There's so much happening. You are always working on such interesting deals or materials for different companies. The structure of the work we do is separated into teams. I love team-based work. And we all know that nobody really likes team-based work if someone's not pulling their weight. But the great news about banking is that everyone here is so hardworking and intelligent that you're just learning from them and you feel like there's a lot of growth opportunity within those teams. So it's actually such a great support function. And you're separated into teams for the number of clients that you're serving. The clients are actual companies, so it's not people. And the role of an investment banker is essentially to be the middleman between people who are quote unquote buyers, like investment firms and funds, and potentially other strategic acquirers, like other companies, and your actual client, which is just a company who's either looking to acquire another company, be acquired, maybe spin off a division, or raise money in the form of equity or debt. So there's so many different things that they could want to do from a financing perspective or just from, a business transformation perspective. And bankers focus on being the middleman for that piece. And we work with lawyers, we work with honestly everyone in that ecosystem and have calls with investors to try and facilitate whatever transaction that company wants. So I think that's what keeps it really, really dynamic and means that every day you could be 1 minute working in a model. For example, yesterday I spent 2, 3 hours with my coworkers talking through how to do a revenue build. Then once you do that, you have a presentation where you build materials on valuation, thinking about what's this company worth? How much might people pay for it? And then going on to have meetings with the CFO, or you just talk through their business model. And I could go on for a long time, but there's even writing pieces in it where you have to like, write memos about what's going on. So truly, whatever skills that people have, at some point they do come in handy here, and it's just such a wealth of opportunity in terms of what you learn that even though you're working a little bit of long hours, it does not really feel like it because it's so interesting.
And so why this industry and this specific role? Like, what was your realization arc in college towards it like?
Yeah, well, given that I started off in a philosophy major and thought I was going to be a lawyer, that realization arc was very different, I think, than some people. Just for people's context, I think a lot of my coworkers wanted to be doctors and then switched into healthcare investment banking. So plenty of people in this space, and the higher ups especially, they have a PhD in biology or they went to med school, but at our level, a lot of them just have a double in biology and business or something like that. I personally did not have any biology background, so I didn't initially consider this option. But whenever I was looking at, what could be my first job out of college, I want it to be something that's broad enough where I don't feel confined. Of course, later in life, especially for me personally, I know it's early, but I was thinking about, well, I'm going to have a family and I don't want to be working, 100-hour weeks. That's not really sustainable for me. But at this rate, if you're only responsible for yourself and you just want to learn as much as possible, the two industries that keep popping up, and that's why they're so popular on Berkeley's campus, is consulting and banking. Because of course you're working long hours, but they're so broad in terms of the problems that you're solving, the clients that you're working with, and the actual information that you have to learn, that it really pushes you to grow as much as possible after college, and you feel like you're still in more of an academic role, in my opinion. So that's how I narrowed it down to consulting and banking and the world of business as my first job. But I knew that I wanted to stay in healthcare just because that's the space I care most about. I know long term goals wise, I want to have an impact in the healthcare space, specifically in Armenia, where my family's from. So I knew that I needed to do something that tangentially related to that and got me the skills that I needed to eventually realize those goals. So as a first job, it's offered me everything that I'm looking for, honestly. The piece where I realized that investment banking would work is just trying the internship. There's no way that you can say, oh, I want to do this industry and then just jump into it and be like, okay, I'm done. Like that's not how it works. Careers are an iterative process, as are most other things in our life. You know, Honestly, everything that I've tried has been an iterative process. So whenever you try an internship, you can say, okay, I like this piece of it, which maybe I can look for in my next role. But the pieces that I didn't like, then you can just optimize for that. And I think that's what's so great about having these 4 years where every summer or maybe sometimes during the semester, you can do little types of work that might differ from each other just to see what's most interesting for you.
That sounds, yeah. I mean, careers are an iterative process is one of the best and most true things I've heard. And I wanted to ask, like, this sounds so interesting, but I think you're a few months into your first job, so
Yeah, 2 months. It has hardly even started.
congratulations. And so, what do you think you've identified as some good parts of it and some bad parts of it?
Yeah. I'll start with the bad parts so we can end off on a good note. Um, Frankly, this is not going to be the first time or last time anybody hears this, but bankers work a lot. We we do get protected Saturdays, which is why we can have this lovely interview here, which means you don't work at all on Saturdays unless a deal is really, really pressing. And this is maybe a Goldman specific policy, but I think other banks have similar policies now. They're trying to get better at managing work-life balance for bankers. But frankly, it does get tiring when you haven't slept much and you just have to keep producing materials, being on calls. So that kind of wears people down. But I think because I'm early on in it, it doesn't really bother me at all. I'm okay. I'm like, this is really fun. So that leads me to the part that's best about it, which I've touched on quite a bit. It's two pronged for me. The reason the work is actually interesting and fun is because number one, you kind of trauma bond with your coworkers. You genuinely do. Like I'm really close with my coworkers. I love them. People who are even older than me, not just all the first year bankers. Even the people who are older, we go out together, we have dinner over the weekends, we hang out. So that really boosts morale and means that you have a bit of a family when you go to work. So you have FOMO when you're almost not at work. That's one piece to it. but also in terms of the actual role, there's just so much to learn that you'll never be bored. If I'm working, I log on at 6:30 a.m. I've logged off at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. I have not had a second where I'm bored or, oh, I can't believe, I'm doing this. Because the work is genuinely interesting and you have to use your brain, which just means that you don't have time to feel bored. And that's one thing that I was trying to optimize for in a job. So I think if people want to feel like there's something to do and that they're actually learning with every task they do, banking is a great option.
Yeah, I feel like from what you describe, even though it's tiring, it's really gratifying,
Mm,
fulfilling,
yeah.
and you stay energized by your team and the people around you. So that seems really nice. And what would you say are a few of your um tips or just some advice for women who want to enter this specific role in this industry?
Yeah, I think the one thing that, since you said specific to women, um, is this whole idea of imposter syndrome, which everyone has. Being at Berkeley, we all, regardless of gender, already feel that we're not good enough. The people across the hall from us have been coding since they were 3 years old. The other person, built a robot when they were in diapers. That's kind of the vibe of Berkeley. But in terms of the world of finance, it goes to a next level because when you don't understand the jargon and people are talking about it, they're like, oh, I worked on this, this, and this, and here were the terms of the deal. And, they're laughing about it or saying, oh, that's so stupid. You're like, why is that funny? I don't even understand what that conversation's about. That could be a little bit alienating and make you think, okay, finance is not the space for me. And I bring this up because that's exactly how it was for me. Both of my parents are teachers and they did not have the business background. So growing up, I hadn't heard any of this jargon. And it was the first time in these informal coffee chats and interviews that I was hearing them joke about deals that I had no idea what was going on. So I think my main tip is don't be scared off by that. I genuinely, if I thought, oh, well, that sounds like something I really don't understand, maybe it's going to be too much of a learning curve to even get a job. I definitely wouldn't have gone into banking. I probably would have done consulting, which for others could be fine, but for me, I know it would not have been a fit. So I would say if you don't understand something, find people who you know that do, your peers, people in BWIB were a great resource. I can be a resource for anyone. And ask them to break it down for you. And if there's a piece that you can Google, watch YouTube videos on, definitely do that. I would spend time Googling what is private equity, and watching videos where they would move boxes and show the acquisition process. I think that's really a piece that's not really spoken about as much, the part where you're learning on your own and trying to understand the industry. But for women in particular, that is one thing that's really worth investing in because then you'll get to a point where you're comfortable with all the conversation topics and then you won't feel imposter syndrome as much anymore.
Yeah, I think that's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Women specifically have a tendency to cut themselves off before they even get started. And
Yeah.
just to not do that and let yourself follow like your curiosity and the things that you think might be something that interests you. But I wanted to transition for my last few questions into some web related questions.
Love
Um,
that.
so with everything that you've spoken about, how do you think web played a part in this? Like, what was that piece?
Yeah. I think probably the biggest piece would be the friendships that I built. Um, the first tier of that being whenever I was a freshman, the entire executive board, I just got really close with them. And of course, they were people who were seniors, already mentally checked out of college. They're like, I have a job, I'm out of here. So they were really willing to, number one, calm me down when I was like, I don't have an internship. I'm going to be on the streets after this. And then, secondly, just be more of like a guiding light in terms of exploring career opportunities. That was so invaluable to me because you could just pick their brains, talk to them about what they're doing, and they're all in such different industries, tech, marketing, some of them in science. So that was first very helpful. But I think second and most the best part of this was my best friend Kushi, who I got out of BWIB. We were committee members together, and whenever we met in BWIB, we had very different interests, but as soon as we started talking, I realized that she unconditionally supported me in like whatever I was doing. At the time, I was like, "Oh, I want to be a lawyer," and she was like, "Yeah, go get it." But as time went on, she started mock interviewing me, although she's not specifically in finance. And she was just so helpful. And then whenever the time came around for her to look for jobs, I was also there for her. So I think the friendships that you build in WIB are so valuable because it's this, no, you just know that they care about you on another level and they'll do anything it takes to move your career forward in your personal life. So that definitely was what kept me afloat throughout my time at Berkeley.
That is so nice to hear, especially being in my first semester at WIB officially and seeing all of these female friendships flourishing. It's really nice to hear. Okay, and then for my final question, what do you think are some of WIB's best kept secrets? Like something someone wouldn't um expect to get out of the club, but could if they mind it well enough.
Yeah. I think it's the leadership opportunities as a committee member. People always think, and also in a lot of clubs, this might be true. If you're in a consulting club, the structure is extremely set where you are doing the whole analyst thing, and then maybe you do a project manager one semester and you have to run for that. And then that's how on their resumes they build leadership experience and talk about it in interviews. The obvious things about BWIB are great. You get an amazing community, people support you, the social culture is amazing. You get academic resources, which I highly recommend people contribute to and actually use because you get what you put into it. But as a CM, I think the leadership opportunities are not talked about enough because, for example, if you're given a project and you do it and you're done, that's great. You can add that to your resume. You now have that experience in the back of your mind if similar work ever comes up in your career. But the piece where I think is really helpful is offering to go above and beyond. Whenever whether it's volunteering events or even some other Tuesday event where there's some help that you can be plugged into. I think being the person who offers is really important because then they know that you are willing to take on more of a role in the organization. And then you can build for yourself a platform where you have the flexibility to do more than just your project that you're assigned by your VP or your team. So I think that's super helpful. And I started off in corporate relations in BWIB. And I remember I had one event to plan. And I, did that and I was done. And I was like, well, I kind of want to talk about things in healthcare. We haven't represented that. My VPs were super open to it. And I just took that in a different direction and worked on it the following semester.
That actually I didn't know that. So
You control over,
personally, that's
how
really
your
nice.
CM time goes.
Yeah, it's just started, so that's great to know.
Yeah.
Just at the start of it. Well, thank you so much. I feel like all of that is so relevant to just demystifying healthcare investment banking because it seems so it's like the name itself seems like jargon a little bit. You're like, oh, what is that? I don't
Yeah.
think I'm
Why does
financial
healthcare need bankers?
enough. No, but when you explained it, it made so much more sense. So thank you so much for doing that. And I also wanted to ask if somebody wanted to contact you about the industry, about just your time in Berkeley, is there a way to do that?
Oh yeah, I think of course LinkedIn is great, email is great, but even though bankers say they're busy, there's always time. So don't worry at all about reaching out. Happy to talk about whatever, even if you know nothing about the industry, we can start from the beginning. So I think it's really cool and people should at least have the chance to learn about it.
Yeah, no, I had the chance to learn about it right now, and it sounds very interesting.
I'm glad I sold it well.
Yeah, you definitely did. But yeah, that's all. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a nice day.